There's no going
So you
back.
can do what you wanna do. You can do what you wanna do.
Hello again, artists. Welcome to day 28. This is Dalene FM, and today we're going to be talking about focal point, which is one of the principles of art. There's 5 different methods artists use to tell us what the focal point is in their paintings. The first one is, of course, is color, where one of the items is vastly different and very obviously the focal point because of its color. Another one is isolation, where one of the objects is slightly separated from the rest of them, so your eye automatically goes to the separated object first. Then, of course, there's placement right in the center. Which helps us to identify that the object that's right bang in the middle of the painting is the focal point. This is an interesting one. This is convergence. Convergence is when various elements of the design of the painting, of the layout, of the composition, draw our eye to one point that the artist wants to make the focal point. And unusual. Now, the unusual is when one of the items is vastly different and doesn't seem to quite belong there. So those are the 5 ways that artists help us to identify the focal point in their paintings. So let's do what we normally do now and have a look at a couple of paintings and see how this has been handled. Alright, now we've certainly got a color situation here. The sun is very much the brightest point in the painting. Now this is something that you've got to be careful of when you're deciding on what your focal point is going to be. If you've got a nightscape with the moon or a landscape with the sun, you've got to make sure that either you want the sun to be your center point, your focal point, or you've got to handle it in a way that it's not going to be your focal point, because it is usually such a bright element in the sky that it's going to be your focal point whether you like it or not, unless you handle it differently. But in this case, the artist clearly wanted us to understand that the bright sun on the horizon was the focal point. This one here, this pretty little lady with the child in her arms, she's placed slap bang in the center of the painting, so she's very definitely the focal point. And this one here, Van Gogh draws our eye to the sun up in the top right hand corner of the sky. He does it by various methods, but particularly a difference in color. There's also convergence, where there's lines leading up to it. I included an abstract piece. In fact, I've included a Jackson Pollock as well. You'll be proud of me. I didn't want you to think that I was terribly anti-abstract work. So in this abstract piece here, we can see a couple of options. That one to me stands out as the most obvious highlight. There's also the white here that could well be. It doesn't really fight with one another, but we've got color that is helping us to identify the focal point of the abstract piece over here. Here we've got a couple of things happening. We've got a yellow skirt, which is helping us to identify this lady as the focal point, but we've also got a child sitting on the side here that is isolated. The kid, however, is quite a lot smaller than the adult, so it's very definitely a secondary focal point. So I would still maintain that this is our main focal point. In fact, it happens to be the lady's butt. Not very flattering. And here in this little painting by Seurat, beautiful painting using amazing juxtaposition, Seurat has helped us to understand that the lady here on the extreme right hand side of the painting is by far the focal point. We've got secondary focal points going on here, and he's encased all of this in a shadow area. So all of this here is a primary and secondary focal point encased in shadow. The rest of the painting is bright sunlight. So this becomes context, and these are our focal points here. Focal point 1, focal point 2, and context. And of course we've got our amazing Jackson Pollock. He's got a focal point here, a big red slash right across the side, the center of the painting. This is an example of unusual, where we've got an unusual element in the piece of artwork. The mountains are usual, the wall is usual, the body of the floating head, so to speak, is quite normal, but here we've got this huge big moon-shaped floating head, which is very unusual, so that very clearly defines the head as the focal point of that painting. This is a cute little design showing convergence. Everything points to the white spot in the middle. So this is very clearly our focal point. And here we have a Kandinsky. Again, I'm not going to exclude artists that I don't enjoy. We've got a Kandinsky here with a big black and purple focal point. He's using both isolation as well as the size of the element, the contrast, everything. He's using all of that to make us understand that that is the focal point of this design. Here we've got an unusual where we've got a starfish. This is a photograph, but it works the same way. We've got a starfish lying on a bunch of pebbles. It's a different shape. It's a slightly different color, so we understand the starfish is very definitely the focal point. And of course we've got the same thing happening here, a brightly colored umbrella in a field of snow with a bunch of cars covered in snow. This one is quite interesting because the artist is helping us to understand in a number of different ways that the lady is the focal point here. When you look at this painting, the first thing you see is the brightness of the shirt. Your eye is drawn up to her face, of course, but then you notice we've got a skull sitting on her lap. So we've got both color and the unusual. That is helping us to understand that this lady and her torso is the focal point of this painting. We've also got a candle in front of the mirror there that is helping give us context and a secondary focal point. Well, artists, that was a talk on focal point and the various different methods that you can use to draw the eye of your viewer to the areas of the painting that you want them to see first. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've learned something, please like and share and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, won't you do me a favor, please, and go and select on the page, switch on the notifications and the See First buttons so that you don't miss any of the lessons going forward. Thanks again for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow with the next of our Principles of Art, Scale. Bye.
That's what you want to do.